Hello again, it's Brian. I'll keep this short, but I just wanted to mention one more time that you can visit voidsignal.net or patreon.com/voidsignal to sign up for the Void Signal Patreon. All the tiers are the same, and in exchange you get hours and hours of content with me, your friendly, charismatic host and friend. And all the tiers are the same. For as little as $2, you can help support the creation of more ad-free Void Signal. Why ad-free? Because I don't like corporations or ads. So if you want to, if you are like-minded, then we should work together to continue making this thing. Thanks for your consideration, and if you are going to Dark Force Fest, I hope to see you there. Please say hello. I would love to say hello, exchange faces, greetings, names, waves. We can embrace if you'd like. I'm not opposed to that. That might be okay. But anyway, take care. Hope your weekend is okay. See you soon.
Okay. Let me get some earbuds or something.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time.
Oh, wait. Say something again?
Yep. Check, 1, 2.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, there you are.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for making this work and showing up to this. I appreciate it.
Oh, no. I'm happy to.
All right. Well, we're already rolling. It kind of just starts. Are you ready, or do you need a minute? Or
yeah. No, I'm here.
Okay. All right. Cool. I just sat down with my coffee and everything, so I'm ready as well.
Take a second. Whatever you gotta do.
Okay. Let me just get a sip.
I'm easy.
Get my lips all juiced up and everything. It is good to talk to you again. We met at Mechanismus 2022, and I'm just kind of a quick little preamble to sort of let people know how I know you. But prior to that, when I was at Region Magazine, I had reviewed a much older Stoneburner album, a very different version of Stoneburner.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so seeing you, and I had, that was kind of the last of it for a time. So seeing you at Mechanismus, I was like, okay, I'm looking forward to this. And your set was fantastic. You and Donna and Nathaniel were all so charming and such lovely people and made great conversation. So this has kind of been in the works for a little bit. I've been meaning to have you on because the new face of Stoneburner and the new things that you've been making has been something really worth paying attention to, something really kind of special. So how are you? How did you get here? Who is Stephen Archer? Where do you want to start?
So this has been my thing, industrial music or electronic music. That's been my thing since I was a kid. I mean, like, I was listening to Tangerine Dream when I was like 10,
Sure.
And then I discovered, like Tangerine Dream and Pink Floyd and all that stuff. I discovered punk when I was about 14 or so. And then when I was about 16, so this was like 87, somebody introduced me to Skinny Puppy. I was like, this is it. This is everything I like all at once. And kind of went from there. I'd been in bands. Like I started DJing when I was like 18, before I was even really old enough to get into the clubs I was working at. And had some rock bands that never really went anywhere, and then another band that didn't go anywhere. And then when Don and I got together, we started a band called Seraphim Gate, and it was much more like standard goth stuff. But the other two people in it decided to move. And so we were like, okay, well, we're just going to do this ourselves. We're not going to be reliant on anybody. So I just got some gear and started learning how to do it. And, then everything else just kind of spawned out of that. Stoneburner, we've had all kinds of different projects. There's Trinity Project, which was our take on the idea of experimental music, but that experimental music that had rules to it, where you would perform. There was lots of variation within anything, but there were changes from song, within the songs, where everybody had to coordinate and had to practice in order to get it all working right.
Sure.
And then my own other project, Hopeful Machines, which is just a clearinghouse for everything else that I ever, if I want to write a song that's one note for 20 minutes, I'll put it out into that. But Stoneburner specifically started because I actually kind of came out of a couple of songs that I did with Hopeful Machines. And it also happened because I will lock onto a name for a band and I'll just be like, that's a really cool name. I need to figure out what that's going to be. Sure. And so I knew what the name of the band was and what the logo for it was for 3 years before I had anything written for it. Because I kept trying to write something and I couldn't find it.
Right.
And then one day I was fucking around with a bunch of samples from Dune and ramped up the tempo to like 150 beats per minute and just turned the shield wall sound into this big bass pad. And I was like, there it is. That's what I've been trying to get to. And I wrote like the first 2 records in a month. And it was just this idea of, what would dance music on Arrakis sound like?
Right.
And that was a lot of fun because I basically gave myself a bunch of rules. And I was like, okay, well, it's a tribal society, so those elements are going to be there, but it's also technological. So I was allowed to use synthesizers, but I didn't use guitars. So in place of guitars, I could do things like using distorted hurdy-gurdies. So I always have like different... I don't know. I'm a big fan of like limitations and how you use limitations to force yourself to be more creative. So that's what. So I did like 6 records worth of that, and some EPs and some tours, and I sat down to write the next one, and I was like, I could do all of that again, and the people who like it would really like it, but would bore the shit out of me. So I just decided, I was like, well, I'm just going to write the industrial record that I've been threatening myself that I was going to write for years and never did it. And so that's where Technology Implies Belligerence came from. And for me, the whole project is, I'm extremely disappointed in what, I grew up on Skinny Puppy and Fetus and, all of the experimentation that happened with a lot of that stuff. And I'm very disappointed with how people have taken all of that and distilled it down into these specific elements and made it about dance music or whatever. I'm like, you could dance to all that stuff before, but it wasn't built for that.
Right.
It just happened to work that way. And I always look at these bands. I'm like, you can, within the genre, you can literally use anything to make sound, and you're not. You're just sticking with all of this stuff, or you're writing songs. You write the songs to be a dance song, and then you just kind of throw lyrics at it until you get something that sounds kind of cool, but you're not actually saying anything. And so with Stoneburner, the lyrics and actually the content of what I'm talking about, it's really important that even because of the effects, you can't understand them. That's why there are lyric sheets out there. There is content, and it's talking about things that matter, and to me anyway. And it's not just about, when I'm in the cyber war,
Right.
So, so that's kind of the main goal of Stoneburner has been, and to bring around as much of that kind of sense of like, look, there's this entire universe that you could be doing with it, and you're not, and that's really disappointing. So,
that was a thing about a newer Stoneburner that I really greatly appreciate is that it is industrial music again, and sort of it feels that way with like more modern production. Everything sounds very crisp and very sort of cleaned up, and I mean that in a in a positive sense when it comes to industrial music, because I mean, everything back then, like when you and I were coming up, like a lot of that stuff, I mean, it sounded like shit on accident, like because that's just how it was.
Yeah, you just did the best you could with what you had.
Yeah, exactly. But I do love your the strong political stances that you've taken in your music. It was a delight to see a Nazi get thrown out of Mechanismus during your performance. Yeah, thank you so much for that, for making a political music genre fairly political again.
Right. Well, it's funny. It's weird because I've noticed a lot of people, they don't want to get their hands dirty or alienate potential fans. I don't have that problem. I hate it because I'm not a political animal in general. But when I saw how things were going, I was like, I'm very fortunate in that I'm in this kind of privileged position where I can literally stand up with a microphone and yell at people, and or put something out there where I think I'm trying to make these points, and so when everything got started going downhill, I was like, okay, well, I guess this is what I'm doing now, and it's I've always been about being art. If art isn't honest, then it's either it's boring and it lacks any commitment. And the way I see it, it's like these are the things I believe, and I'm literally putting my money where my mouth is. I have lost fans because of it. I've certainly gained fans because of it. I periodically, if I am playing, I did stuff that material in Texas, or
Right.
Florida, and so there's always things where I will, like, if I'm concerned about them, I will talk to security and be like, look, this is what I'm doing. It's all going to be in really big words up on that screen. So, just nothing's happened yet, but you never know.
Yes.
So,
but I'm just glad that there are people who are willing to do it. And, I don't know. I feel like that is a thing that maybe is a concern that we've had to maybe take more seriously. I mean, especially here in the States with how insane and violent the world has become.
right.
Is that a thing that you, I don't think that never mind. I already know the answer to that question. It is not a thing that will slow you down. I expect, or make you shy away from it.
No, I mean, I honestly, I think that I was active in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, I was out there protesting for abortion rights, or like doing escort at clinics. And, I think it's incredibly important. Two of my, I have two adopted kids. They're not mine, but they're people who became very good friends and when they were younger, and I have the honor of them listening to what I say and considering those things in their lives. Both of them are trans. And, I find it so bizarre that people will get up in arms about this. It's like, this has nothing to do with you. These are just people wanting to live their lives. And so I think it's incredibly important for anybody who does have a voice to be able to stand up and say, hey, these people are humans. And it's important for those people to also see that people are standing up for them, and not feeling completely separated from society.
Right.
Like it doesn't hurt us, and
Right.
it's good for those people. And, basically, I mean, my whole trip has always been like, I don't care what you worship, as long as it's okay to give the name of shoes, just don't nail the shoes on their feet. It's real simple. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. Don't tell me how to live mine. And if I'm not hurting anybody, who gives a shit?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, so the future of Stoneburner, we've got Dark Force Fest, coming up in like a couple months. I'm excited to see you. I'm looking forward to it.
First thing on Saturday, which is a really odd choice on Jet's part, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, I noticed, but whatever. I was still glad to see a actual industrial band on the roster, because that is like very much what Stoneburner sort of feels like to me. Because you and I, are probably about the same age, I'd guess. So early exposure to like stuff like Skinny Puppy and Fetus and some of the other things that you mentioned. It's like, I do feel that the industrial genre has sort of lost some of its teeth or some of its edge a little bit. I mean, there are outliers that have risen to the top, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But overall, I have sort of felt that way a little bit about it. A little bit of safety, a little bit of like, this is less interesting because this sounds like this other band that did this thing. Or
yeah, and that's a real problem as far as I'm concerned. Like, if you're I had somebody come up to me one time, and this was a club years ago, and they were like, hey, here's this band's demo CD. You should listen to them. They sound just like Frontline Assembly. And I was like, then why would I listen to it?
Yeah.
like that's not a selling point if you sound just like some other person. And I wear my influences on my sleeve. If you like Skinny Puppy or Anxious and Newmountain or any of these other bands, you can hear those influences in there.
Sure.
But I'd like to think that you can also, if you squint, hear Peter Gabriel, or, you know, I mean, I've got one of my songs on Belligerence was built out of Kate Bush samples, you know, so.
Yeah. Agreed. I was listening to the most recent record today. What the fuck is its title? The Great Filter. I had to pop open my Spotify really quick. Fucking aces. Really enjoying it. A industrial record for industrial music fans. Really good, really fun. So the other thing I wanted to mention too is that, like, so not only are you do you make music, and I've been fortunate enough to stop into a couple of your streams that you've been doing on like Facebook and such recently. It's been entertaining to watch you work live and sort of like, you know, experiment and mix, and it's been fun.
Oh, that's
nostalgic. Yeah.
That whole thing happened because so I have a degree in fine art. I paint, and that's the majority of our income comes from. And like, I am not a musician in the classical sense. I can play guitar, by which I mean I can play our songs. I can't sit down and like jam with people. It's not how my brain works. Donna went to school for piano, but I can't. You know, I know enough theory to get by. So most of my writing is done on my laptop. The stuff that goes out into the world is just done on my laptop, you know, staring at the piano roll and Reason and moving stuff around until it all works, or working with samples or whatever. And I wanted to create a experience of working with music and sound that is like painting for me, because painting is very much about being in the moment and developing this kind of dialogue with the work, and you're kind of talking to it back and forth. I'm like, well, how about this or that or this other thing? And doing the live broadcasts from the Beast is it's always constantly, we're constantly talking, and I will make choices based on, because a lot of it's random. Like, as much of it as I can make is random. Like, I set up the starting conditions, but like, let's say I'll have a fader that's all breakbeats or whatever. It's got 100 different breakbeat loops in there, and it's randomly playing one for 8 measures and then switching to another random one. Or like, there are pieces of movie scores that are in there, and it's the same kind of thing, or dialogue samples or whatever. And so I always knew approximately what's going to happen, but not exactly. And what those things bring up will then make me go, oh, okay, I need to take this in a different direction now. Like, I'm going to add guitars to it and pull all this stuff back out, and that sort of thing. So it's a ridiculous amount of fun to pilot.
It seems like it. I mean, and I was in there. I popped in a couple nights ago and just like left it open in the other window, and it was like, it was great. It was like really nice to like listen to and like hear how it changed and progressed, and it was fun. That was the thing I wanted to touch on as well, is that you are a artist in more sense than one, is that you you are also a painter. And I wasn't sure if that that's a thing that I know about you, but like, I don't know, we've been Facebook friends for a long time, so so I don't know if others know that about you. But how long have you been doing that? And congratulations on that being the bulk of your income. Like, I feel like that is the exception and certainly not the rule.
Yeah, and I don't recommend people trying to do it, to be honest. Like, the reason we're able to do this is because Dee and I have both known who we were for a very long. Like, I mean, I was taking college art classes in high school, and I have spent my entire life learning to do what I do with that. And so, like, we built our life to facilitate that, by which I mean we don't have kids. We live in the middle of nowhere, which keeps our cost of living down. Honestly, without Facebook, I wouldn't have as much of a career. Because I can sell directly to customers as opposed to going through galleries, which are going to take 50, 60% of the sales.
Sure.
And they're going to be exclusive about it. So because of that, I'm able to, you know, sell and keep the prices down. and also I've just over the years I've gotten really good at working very, very quickly, which helps a great deal. And it's also not something that I think would come easy to most people.
Sure.
You were asking actually about the future of Stoneburner,
Yeah.
and so related to that, I have a graphic novel coming out later this year, which is based on a Stoneburner record called Red in Tooth and Claw, and so when that drops, and that book is the best thing I've ever done in my life. Like, if I died right now, I would be able to kind of go, okay, you know what, that's out there, or that will be out there. I'm okay with that. Like that sums up everything I think is important in the world. So when that comes out, I will be re-releasing Red in Tooth and Claw, which is where the whole wolf thing came from. And so I'll be re-releasing that record, and that's basically I'm reproducing it. The original will still be available. I'm not going to get rid of it, but I'm going to remix it, and I'm adding a few new songs to it that relate specifically to aspects of the story that I didn't know at the time that presented themselves as I wrote the book. So it will be kind of Big Red Wolf for a year and a half or two after that all comes out.
Gotcha. That's exciting. I'm interested, especially like that description of everything I think is important. Like that is, I would endeavor myself, I guess, to sort of hopefully accomplish something similar. I'm hoping to write a book one day. We're not there yet, but that makes me endeavor to do the same thing as try and put
it was
down,
a profoundly shocking experience watching it happen, because it was because I knew the story. I'd known the story for 5 years.
Sure.
And but watching it develop in front of me as it all started to come together, like the way I always explain art to people, and I don't literally mean this, but so it's very space cakey, but I've heard other people use it, and it's the best way I have of explaining it.
Sure.
If you just imagine that all the artwork in the world already exists floating around in the ether in this platonic ideal, and your job is to bring it through and create, put it out into the actual world down here. Your job is to bring it through without fucking it up. So, like, it already knows what it wants to be, and it already knows that, how it is to be, so it can be perfect. And your job is just to make that happen. And you can stop it, and you can talk to it and be like, well, is this a good idea? How about this or that? And you can present ideas to it. And sometimes it will go, yeah, let's do that. But more often than not, I've noticed with art in general, the more you start inflicting your own ego and your own will on it, the worse it gets. And so in a strange way, making this book, it was like just listening to these two characters and just telling their story. I feel strangely separated from it. In a way. I will send you a copy of it to read if you'd like. If that will maybe will help you get some ideas for your own thing.
Absolutely, that would be great. I would love that. I would voraciously read it.
Yeah. It's so, and it just brings together all the things I love, visual art, and then this, and then the story. I think it touches on everything from, like, literally spans the beginning of the end of the universe through the beginning and back to the end, and it deals with everything on a lot of really heavy conceptual levels, but also literally down to stories of individual people who are in a world or in cities that are being destroyed by this giant wolf god, and how they're dealing with it. And I think I've managed to create this character that, like, literally kills maybe a third of the humans on the planet, before stopping, and made him sympathetic and made it something that you actually care about and understand why this happened.
I'm interested. I am really excited about it because I did, as I mentioned, like we've been friends on Facebook for a minute. So I have seen, every now and again you posted like some updates of like, doing something behind the scenes kind of a stuff. And I've been excited to see how it turns out.
No, I'm happy to send it to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I also wanted to just add really quick too, is that, That's a thing about your character that I appreciate, is your willingness to share works in progress and be like, this is what I'm working on and here's how it is so far. And you've also, I've also seen posts of yours where you're like, I'm not happy with this fucking thing. That's I applaud you for being as verbal as you are and as candid as you are.
I am here doing this because of all the teachers that I've had over the years, or, we used to own an art gallery, and that's how we started working with Voltaire, actually. And he came down and he was showing some of his stuff, and he does stop motion. I don't know how many people actually know that. Like, back in the early 80s, if you watched MTV and you saw the station IDs they would do, all of those stop motion station IDs he did for them by himself, like when he was like 20 or something.
I didn't
like that.
Fucking know that.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if you remember there was.
I do. Yeah, there was like a.
Yeah,
there were all kinds of.
Yeah, like the Garden of Earthly Delights, that one, the Bosch one. Yeah, like he did that. He did the Bud Bowl, commercials. So he had, and he also had a series on Sci-Fi for a while called Chi-Chan. It wasn't exactly stop motion, but it was sort of like he built all the figures and then they would cut them up and animate them. But anyway, so we were showing those figures, and we also had a couple of shows, and I didn't know him. We didn't know each other particularly well. Then now we're great friends. But I was like, I want to pick your brain about some of what you do, or how you've done what you've done. He was like, if that's okay, and he just says, I will tell you how to do anything that I know how to do. And that is the attitude that I have always taken, because, I've met people who seem to think that that's some sort of competition or something like that. And it's just like, no, you're never going to be me. I'm not saying I'm better than you are. I'm just like, my brain processes are different. So even if I show you exactly how to do something, what you do with that, you may see some influence of because I taught you, but it's going to be your thing at some point. Like, if you keep at it, you're going to have your own hand in it. And, so I don't know. I'm just a huge believer in that, like, any information should be free. Like, all of I've released a ton of artwork, as much as I really can, under Creative Commons 1, which is, basically saying you can go and do whatever the hell you want with it. You don't have to give me attribution if you don't want to, whatever. Like, I'm just anything. I don't know. I think that anything should be allowed to be used for art, as long as it's not somehow damaging or directly competing with the original property.
Right. And I do absolutely agree with you. This is, the creation of art is certainly not a competition. It is there's no prize. Like, you don't get to win. And I agree with you. That is a thing that I've done throughout a lot of my life, because I was a tutor in college when I was going to school for English writing. So it became like second nature to me, and I love talking and explaining things and seeing a student's eyes light up of like, oh fuck, I get it. Like, I love that shit. So,
teaching is such a wonderful thing.
It is. And I definitely subscribe to that philosophy of like, if I know how to do this, I can show you how to do it. Like, there's no, secrets to be kept, of like how a thing is done. I think,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That just
because all of it's out there online anyway. So it's like, but if hearing it said a certain way changes how you understand it, for instance, I'm really good with tools. Like I'm good at using tools to compensate for things I'm not good at. Like, I can't play piano. I can program the shit out of one though.
Sure.
But there's a limit to it. That I have realized it. I can't do coding, for instance. Like, I've done a lot with electronics over the years. Like, I'm actually sitting here surrounded by wires because I'm working on this weird MIDI guitar thing that I've been doing for a few years. But I'm able to use it because it's got a GUI built into the board, so I can program it using that. But and so knowing, it's great because having these things that you're willing to, it's like, I will teach people, let me show you how to do this, or I can do this thing for you if you can deal with the code. Like, there's this guy I'm working with to try and do a video game for him. Like, I can cover all of the visual stuff. no problem. If you can take care of all the coding, we can make this happen, because I can't do it.
Sure.
My brain doesn't function that way.
Sure. Recognizing your limits. That makes
Yeah,
sense. Sure.
yeah, exactly.
Sure. That makes sense. And I, before I like get around to like asking you kind of the last question of the podcast, the other thing I did want to touch upon briefly, Donna, your partner or wife is
Wife. 25 years in September or October.
Congratulations.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a significant amount of time. So yeah, congratulations to the both of you. But a very talented artist in her own right.
Yes.
I've been meaning to invite her on to the Void Signal as well to talk to.
She'd love to do it.
Because so aside from you and Stoneburner, there's also this whole component of Ego Likeness, also playing at Dark Force Fest.
Yes.
Could you just kind of, I don't know, talk a little bit about...
Sure. So Ego, when we started it, it was kind of, it was very limited, like I was talking about limitations.
Sure.
We were doing everything at the time. We had a sampler and a Juno that I still have, and we were using an MMT. So this was like 1999, 98, 99. And a few other bits and bops. And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, I'm not, this is never going to be the most well-produced thing in the world. We're recording it to a 4-track. This is before we even had, eventually we were able to do a stereo pair into our computer, but we couldn't do any syncing or anything like that.
Right.
And so I was like, so let's, I'm going to do something that's like, fits with that noise that's there. And I was, Mezzanine had just come out at the time by
Massive Attack.
Yeah. Master Tech, yes,
Yeah.
that would be the name of it. I hate this. I have holes in my brains, and whenever I go for specific names, it always falls through.
It's good. I got you.
I was listening to it, and I was like, this would be so cool if like it was that and Last Rites shoved together. And so our first set of demos, and it blows my mind that 20 years later, Metropolis went and released those on CD. We're all just dirty, noisy, experimental trip hop stuff. And so we did that for a while, and that was really cool. It was a good learning experience. I knew how to write songs, but Donna, even though she went to school for piano and opera, and she went to Peabody, which is a huge deal, but they don't teach you how to write songs. They teach you to perform this perfectly.
Right.
Whereas I went to art school, and it was very much about process and, give me 3 chords, I'll write you a song kind of thing.
Sure.
So doing that helped her learn to kind of think in terms of writing songs. So we did that live for like a year and realized that doing trip hop live is just kind of boring. So we started like writing more upbeat and closer to rock. And as it progressed, over the years, we have gotten, I think, we have learned to write more cohesively and, but still hold on to all of the things that we think are important with that, which is the atmosphere and then Donna's lyrics. It's funny, when we first started dating, she was 22 and I was 26, I think. It was inevitable. I was the DJ at the goth club, and she was the hot chick at the punk rock shop.
Right.
This was before Hot Topic existed, so it was like the Baltimore punk rock star. And we're dating, and then she was like, "I sing," and I'm like, "Of course you do." And then she was like, "Well, I write poetry," and I was like, "Of course you do." And then I actually read it, and I was like, "Holy shit, this is really good." And that kind of was amazing. And we've still got some chapbooks of that material that we'll bring out on the road with us sometimes, because it, for somebody who wrote this stuff in high school, it holds up really well.
Yeah.
So Ego has always been a vehicle for getting her ideas out. And it's influenced by everything that we both love. I mean, she grew up with similar music, but also I think Danielle Dax. Like I remember when we started it, somebody was I knew somebody, and they were like, "Oh man, I just came up with like this perfect mix between like Haw Job and Hexadine." And I was like, "Cool, I'm still trying to figure out how to mix Fleetwood Mac and Skinny Puppy." Right. And I feel like we still are able to pull from all of the stuff that we like and make it cohesive enough that it stands on its own well.
Sure. That makes sense. Well, I will go ahead and put the last question of the podcast to you, which is, what is something that you have been enjoying recently? And your answer can be anything from a book to a movie to your dog to whatever. Just what's something that you're just fucking jazzed about as soon as you wake up?
One of my gauges for if I'm doing things properly in my life is when I think about things I need to do, if I find myself thinking, oh, I get to do that versus I have to do that. And I've been very fortunate lately that like I get to do this really cool stuff. Like, I get to sit down and paint whatever I want to paint or write music. And so I just am kind of jazzed about life, really. Like, I feel incredibly lucky and honored that enough people out there give a shit about the things that we make that we're able to scratch out a meager living doing it. We have a bunch of interesting stuff coming up though that's pretty cool that I'm excited about. So we're leaving for the Goth Cruise in a week. So I'm DJing on that. Normally usually one of the bands plays. This year that's not the case, but I'm still DJing on it. And then we get back from that, and Dark Force Fest happens a month after that, and I'm excited because I'll be doing new material with Stoneburner at that show that I haven't done live yet. So that'll be fun. And then Ego is going from that show. Then we're going out for a couple of weeks, doing Ego for a few weeks. We come home from that, and then we're home for a little bit. And then we're going on a book tour, which we've never done before. We're taking Donna on her first poetry book tour, and it's cool. Like she's been booking it all herself and setting everything up. Like normally that's been either our booking agents or my job, and so it's kind of nice that she's just been on it.
That's rad.
Well, it's cool. Like she's I never want people to think, oh, she's just like the singer or whatever. Like she's our tour manager. She does all of the routing and like 90% of the driving. Like she is so badass. Like she'll do an 8-hour drive, sound check, play a show, and do all the social stuff that goes along with that, and then do it again the next day. Like I've got a sleeping disorder, so I can do night driving, but we often don't need that as much.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, she's really on the ball with all of that shit, which is very cool.
Just to add really quick, I did meet her for 5 to 10 minutes or so, and she was the smartest person in the room, like easily.
Absolutely is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's really cool. So for me, making things is very process oriented, and it's just trying different stuff until I find something that works, and then building off of that. One day, I was in the studio. She comes in, still dripping out of the shower, sits down at the piano, and performs the song that we do, Wolves, in its entirety, completely done. I mean, just right there. She was like, yeah, I wrote it while I was in the shower, and, there it is. Or, like, watching her develop ideas for her novels. I'm just like, my job has always been coming up with ideas, like on demand. That's what I have to do. Sure. And she'll come up with shit, and I'm like, where the hell did that even come? Like, how did you even get from here to that? And it solved this thing that you were trying to solve. It's very, very cool. And the flip side of that is we've been really public about this. So I don't feel like I'm talking in a school. She's, she got Lyme disease about 8 or 10 years ago, which metastasized and turned into fibromyalgia. And so she is in pain, ridiculous amounts of it constantly, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So she is still getting up and doing all of this stuff, and it's really incredibly badass.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, but yeah, I do admire her for her strength and for her diligence, constitution, I guess.
But, I mean, I've known other people that have it, and I know how much, we all have our struggles with our things, and so many people can have sometimes they'll just choose to give up. And she, and she definitely has days and weeks and months that are like that, where she's just ground down.
Sure.
But, we still plan all of this stuff, and we still do it because it gives her something to focus on, and kind of gives a framework to life. Otherwise, I think it would be even worse. So I think she would rather go out and do all of this stuff, even if it hurts, than just sit around at home and fall apart.
Yeah, that's fair. That makes sense. I know people very similar who I'd rather do this thing than just, the alternative, whatever that may be. What a wonderful answer. Also, just being able to get to do things as your answer for what you're enjoying recently. That's a perspective I will have to try and adopt, I guess, because it's a thing I've not really, I've not framed what I do in that way before. But just to answer the question myself, as I usually do, what the hell have I been enjoying recently? I don't want to give the same answer because I usually give some touchy-feely Care Bear kind of an answer like that of like, oh, my friends or whatever. Let's see. What have I been enjoying recently? Fuck it. I mean, that's what I have to answer. The Void Signal Discord server has become a wonderful community for me of people who, when I can't sleep or I'm having a hard time or whatever the case may be, right? Like let me pop open my phone or my computer and here's a community of people who are willing to listen or be supportive or offer solutions. So I guess community is my answer. And I definitely encourage people to build communities, join communities, whether that be a goth group on Facebook, like Sounds and Shadows, or, a goth group for the local city that you're in or whatever. Join groups with other artists too, talk, communicate, build, form connections. It's
nice. I have a few artists that I know that are kind of in a similar situation as I am, and are certainly as dedicated as I am. And it's great being able to kind of turn to them, and they're in different mediums. So I'll be like, hey, when you do this, how does this work for you? Because you never know what's going to spawn from that. I was talking to somebody once, and they painted in a style that I've always envied. And she said one thing about how she was taught to do that. And it was very, she was like, you use the largest brush until you can't anymore, but you try and use it as much as you can. And that immediately made sense to me with trying to get to some of these stylistic changes. And if you've noticed on Facebook, you'll see that I've been doing a lot more kind of painterly stuff, and that is all direct result of one single sentence that a friend of mine said.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of that as well. You and I are of one mind about that. I am romantic about the idea of somebody says the one thing you needed to hear, and it, that one little line that just alters your perspective enough to go oh shit, that doesn't get to happen often, but man, when it does, it's powerful, it's wonderful, it's worth looking out for. So yeah, absolutely agree with you, and that's a wonderful thing when that happens. So thank you for that, to thinking about the fact that instead of I have to do Void Signal today, I get to do Void Signal today.
Right. Yeah. It's just you get to do this, how cool is it that you get to do this thing that people listen to and it's, Jim Coleman used to be in a band called Cop Shoot Cop. He put out a record a bunch of years back on Invisible and called Filer. And he was playing keyboards with Fetus, and they came through, and I went to see them, and I was like, hey, that record matters. I really like it a lot. And he was like, thank you. It's one of those things where you're just screaming into a void. So I always talk about on Facebook, it's you eulogize the living. If you get a chance to go to somebody and say, hey, this thing that you're just throwing out into the world because it's what you do mattered to me at this time or in this way, it's just the coolest thing for everybody,
Yeah. And given the past year or two of sort of how people's lives have been playing out, given the insane state of the world. Just say those, like you said, say those things now. Like, don't,
exactly.
When it gets announced that somebody died, like, don't post that, like, oh, this meant so much to me. You should tell them while they're here to hear it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And you never know how much good that's going to do. It might help give them, like, particularly with people who are like depressed or whatever, and that's so pervasive that like that might be the thing that gets them through that day or gives them something to hold on to.
Yeah. Or in the case of, of artists, like maybe about to hang it up, maybe about to quit, and be actually, like, I fucking don't want to do this. Oh,
that happened to me. Somebody, I was kind of thinking that maybe I was done with like putting out Hopeful Machines material, and somebody wrote me out of the blue, and they were saying, "Hey, man, thank you for doing it." And it was exactly the right moment. I was like, "Oh, okay, well, there you go then. All right, cool." Yeah,
exactly. Wonderful. Okay, well, that is it. Thank you so much for coming and having a talk. It has been my pleasure, my honor to have you on. Again, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Dark Force Fest and our continued friendship.
Absolutely. And by all means, get in touch with Donna. I'm sure she'd love to do it.
I absolutely will. She is on the list along with Nathaniel, who, before we are done, I just have to shout out also, Nathaniel is a fucking wonderful human being.
He really is.
Yeah. So
I am constantly, I will write him and tell him, as he has often said, there are many abrasive people in this world, and Steve is definitely one of the most abrasive people I know. But every once in a while I write him and I'm like, I really appreciate the fact that we see eye to eye on all of these things when I look out in the world and see all these people who just don't get certain things.
Sure.
He is one of the smartest, most kind people I know. And as is his wife, Sarah.
Yes. I got to speak to maybe both of them. I don't quite recall, but at least him for several minutes, some amount of time at Mechanismos, and all of you left such a positive impression. I was like, wow, well, look at these like smart intellectual people who like want to have interesting discourse. So it has been a pleasure, sort of being in your orbit and watching you work and to get to talk to you. And thank you again so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will let you know.
Thanks, and I'll send that book off to you in just a second.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to it. All right, have a great rest of your evening, and I will yell at you when it's time for this to come out.
Great, thanks. Take care.
Take care. Bye. Void Signal intro and outro music courtesy Processor. Visit processor2.bandcamp.com for more Processor, and visit voidsignal.net to help support the creation of more Void Signal. Thank you.